Hey guys, Eatway here, welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be showing you guys my 2018/19 Premier League predictions. This is going to be a big video, probably quite a controversial one. I'm sure you guys will have a lot of differing opinions, so let me know down below your predictions for the Premier League. Who do you think is going to win? Who's going to get relegated? Let me know down below. If there's anything you disagree with in this video, which there's probably going to be a lot of, just let me know down below. Now, I've based these predictions off three main factors, the first of which is the transfer window and just how well certain teams have strengthened or possibly even weakened their sides over the course of the transfer window. Next up is how well the team did last season, as obviously that gives a good reflection of how well we could potentially expect them to do this season. And finally is just how good the team is on paper, where you would expect them to come with the players they currently have in their side. Now, as always with any prediction, it's virtually impossible to take into account the random nature of football. So many surprises and upsets can happen that no one would really predict. For example, Leicester winning the league a couple of years ago, no one would have guessed that. Maybe Burnley coming 7th last season, again getting into the Europa League, that's something else that no one would have really predicted. So I'm not really going to be taking into account those kind of random upsets and things that could happen. It's just going to be based off what is likely to happen with the current size these teams have. Also, I can't predict the future. I'm not fully sure what's going to happen maybe in the winter transfer window. Some teams are going to strengthen their sides very, very well. Certain big players for some teams could get injured as well, and that could play a role as well. But as I said, this is just based off the current size these teams have, how well they did last season, and also how well they've actually done in this transfer window strengthening their side. Starting off with the relegation zone in 20th position, I can't help but think that Cardiff are going to get relegated. Just with the side they've got compared to the sides around them and the signings they've made so far this summer transfer window, I don't think they're going to be able to compete with the 5 or 6 other teams that are all going to be fighting to stay in the Premier League. I've got nothing against Cardiff, just looking at the signings they've made. Josh Murphy from Norwich, Greg Cunningham from Preston, Alex Smithies from QPR, and Bobby Reed from Bristol City. They're decent players, but when you get into the Premier League, you need proven quality players, and they're all coming from lower divisions, League One and the Championship predominantly. They don't really have as many quality players as a lot of the teams around them, especially when you look at the two other promoted sides, Fulham and Wolves. They have made some very, very good and astute signings, and they've really strengthened their sides with quality players, players who've played in the Champions League, players who've played in top leagues like the Premier League, Liga and La Liga. And then when you look at Cardiff, they just haven't really done the same. They've spent a lot less money, and I can't help but think they're going to get relegated. In 19th position, I've gone with Brighton. Again, I've got nothing against them, but just looking at the side they have compared to the teams around them, it's not as good, and they haven't really strengthened their side much with the summer transfer window. The signings they've made, similar to Cardiff, haven't been at that top quality on the whole. I mean, looking at them, they've made a lot of signings, but players from Mainz, Yeovil, Sunderland, Fulham, Lille, Mamelodi Sundowns. The only real quality signing they've made, in my opinion, is Yakan Bash from AZ Alkmaar. I believe he was the top scorer last season in the Eredivisie, and he is a quality player on the wing. He will bring goals to their side, but apart from him, they haven't really strengthened overall, and they've lost a fair few players. Not many of their big kind of first team players, but they have lost a bit of squad depth, and the players they've replaced them with haven't really been up to the quality that you need to stay in the Premier League, especially compared to the teams around them. So again, I can't help but think they will get relegated. Now in 18th, I've gone with Huddersfield, and I think they're in quite a similar situation to both Cardiff and Brighton. They haven't strengthened their side as much as the other teams around them. Each season, when you look at the relegation battle, there's normally about 6 or 7 teams in contention there, and when you look at the other teams around them, the likes of Southampton, for example, maybe Fulham, Newcastle, those types of teams, they either did pretty well last season, or they've made some decent signings so far in the summer transfer window, and they've managed to bring in some real quality players. When you look at Huddersfield, they've signed Ben Hammer from Leicester. He's a second choice keeper. He's not really going to make much of a difference there. They signed 2 left backs who are both decent, Congolo from Monaco and Eric Durham from Dortmund, but obviously only one of them is going to be able to play. And apart from that, they haven't really done much. They've brought in Bakuna from Groningen. They've brought in Ramadan Sobhi from Stoke, although he wasn't really a starter and didn't really do much for Stoke last season. They haven't really strengthened their side. And as I've said, compared to the teams around them, their side just doesn't look as good. And they did stay in the Premier League last season. They came 16th, which is a pretty good result for them, given their resources. They don't spend much money, and no one really expected them to even get into the league, having won the playoffs, I believe it was 2 years ago now. They did great to get into the Premier League, but I think they're probably going to go down next season. Moving out of the relegation zone, we've got 17th up to 11th, and I think these positions are the hardest to predict out of any in the entire league. Any one of these teams could potentially get involved in a relegation battle, and we could see one or two of these teams potentially making their way into the top 10 as well. It's very, very hard to predict. I'll try and explain why I've put each team in each position, but it's by no means set in stone. A lot of these teams could swap around, so don't give me too much stick for these ones because it's so hard to predict. In 17th, I've gone with Newcastle. They actually came 10th last season. They did really well, and they've got one of the best managers in the league in Rafa Benitez. The reason I think they may do a little bit worse is because they're a club that are in turmoil right now with the owner, Mike Ashley. So many of the fans are against him. He's not really that involved in the club, and I think because of that, it's going to have quite a negative impact on how they play next season. They have made some decent signings, the likes of Dubravka from Sparta Prague. He was pretty good towards the end of last season when he joined them, and they have made that a permanent deal now. They also signed Ki Sung-young from Swansea. He's a proven Premier League player. They got Kennedy from Chelsea, quite a talented young player, scored a few goals for them last season. He was quite good. They got Fabian Schär from Deportivo La Coruña in La Liga, and then Musso from Mainz as well. So I think they've signed enough quality to keep them in the league next season. They did lose Mitrovic, who wasn't that good for them, but was good and quite promising for Fulham. And they also lost Mikel Moreno, another player who was okay for them last season. So I think they've got enough quality to stay in the league, but just because of the fact that their owner doesn't seem that involved in the club and could potentially leave them, I think that could be quite negative for them next season. So they could potentially get involved in a relegation battle, but I think they should be safe and will stay up. Next up in 16th is Watford. I could potentially see them falling into a relegation battle, but I could also see them maybe finishing like 11th or 10th. They're quite a hard club to predict. They got Gerard Deulofeu on a permanent deal, which is pretty good. They did lose Richarlison, but they got 35 million for him, which they could potentially reinvest and get some good players from. We still have a week to go in the transfer window. Now, Richarlison was good for them in the early stages of the season, scored a fair few goals and put in some man of the match performances, but then after that, after Marco Lopez left, he didn't contribute any goals or assists at all. So he was a promising player, and I think losing him is quite a big loss, but the fact they've got a lot of money for him is good. Along with those signings, they've got Mark Navarro from Espanyol, Messina from Bologna, Ben Foster from West Brom, a decent signing there. They lost Zarate as well, and Pantilimon, but I think on the whole, they've got a decent team and they should be able to stay up next season in the Premier League. In 15th, I've gone with Southampton. This is another team that could potentially get involved in a relegation battle, and again, could potentially get into the top 10. A very, very hard team to predict. Now, they've made a few decent signings. They've signed Armstrong from Celtic, El Yanusi from Basel, who is quite a good player. Angus Gunn from Man City. Didn't play for City's first team, but he went on loan to Norwich and actually showed a lot of promise. So he could be a good signing there. And also Yannick Vestergaard from Borussia Mönchengladbach, another decent player, previously playing at a high level in the Bundesliga. So they've made some good signings. A lot of them have played at quite a high level and have experience. So I think they have strengthened their team. The only downside, though, they've actually lost Tadic. He went to Ajax, which I feel is quite random because he was playing quite well for them, and he's still kind of in his prime, and he was a good creative player. So they've lost a bit of creativity. They also lost Boufal and Guido Carrillo, who was their record signing. So they've lost a few players, they've brought in a few. I think they've got just enough to stay in the league next season. In 14th, I've gone with Bournemouth, and just like the previous teams I've mentioned, they could easily get involved in the relegation battle, but likewise, they could maybe get somewhere near the top half of the table too. I think they're probably going to finish somewhere around 14th to 17th, somewhere in that lower section of the table, but I think they will stay up. Now, they haven't had the best of transfer windows. They've only signed 2 players, one of which is Diego Rico from Leganes. That's a decent signing. Previously playing in La Liga, quite a high level. Also David Brooks from Sheffield United, who I don't know much about. They lost a couple of players, including Benica Fobe, Max Gradel, Federici, and Lewis Graben, just to name a few. They lost quite a lot of players, but most of them weren't kind of starting players, so it won't make too much difference to their side. And the reason I think they'll stay up is because they have a lot of promising young players, the likes of Ake, Lewis Cook as well, and they've got some experienced quality players too, the likes of Charlie Daniels and Defoe. They've got Begovic as well, Boric. They've got some decent players. I think they've got enough quality to stay in the league next season, and with these young players coming through, they can only improve in the future if they make some good signings. I don't see them getting relegated. I think they're going to be able to stay up and probably finish somewhere as I said, around 13th to 17th. In 13th, I've gone with the second newly promoted side in this prediction, and it is Fulham. Now, they've had one of the best transfer windows, I think, alongside Liverpool and Wolves. They've brought in some real quality players for some decent prices too. Now, the first of which is Seri. They got him from Nice. He was a very in-demand player. Barcelona, Man City, Chelsea, lots of big sides wanted to sign him, and in the end, they managed to get a hold of him. They also got Maxime Le Marchand, also from Nice, a quality young French defender with a lot of promise. They got Fabricio from Besiktas, Spanish goalkeeper, pretty good. He's going to bring some more quality to their side. They got Andre Schürrle from Dortmund. He's proven in the Premier League and also in the Bundesliga. He's played at quite a high level. He's played in the World Cup. He's a good player, and he can do very well for them, I think. They also got Mitrovic on a permanent deal. He was decent for them last season. I think he can get double-figure goals with the right service. And they also got Alfie Mawson from Swansea, another good signing. They lost Ryan Fredericks. That's the only major loss, but they really have strengthened their side. I think all of those signings are going to go straight into their starting 11 and make them a better team. So I think overall they've had a great transfer window, and I definitely see them staying up. They could be a real surprise team and maybe get into the top 10. They may get involved in a relegation battle, but with those players, I think they're good. They're going to finish mid-table. Now in 12th, I've gone with Burnley. Yes, they finished 7th last season, but I feel they were overachieving. They're not going to do as well this season, and the main reason for that is because they haven't signed anyone yet. They have signed 0 players. They are in talks to sign Joe Hart, but I don't think he'll strengthen their side that much, as they already have Pope and Heaton, so I'm not even sure if Hart would start for them. They have got a very good team mentality. They play very well as a team together, and they're very solid defensively, but they've lost a couple of players and they haven't strengthened, so I don't see them doing as well as they did last season. But mid-table, given the amount of money they're spending, given their resources, I still think that is a very good result, and I could maybe see them going a little bit lower. I could maybe see them going a little bit higher, but I think mid-table would be good for them next season. In 11th, I've gone with Leicester City. They've made some quality signings so far this season, with Ricardo Pereira from Porto, Johnny Evans from West Brom, who's going to bring a lot of experience to their side, also James Maddison from Norwich, who had a great season last year, and also Danny Ward from Liverpool, who will most likely play second fiddle to Kasper Schmeichel. They did lose Robert Huth, Ahmed Musa, and most importantly, and the reason I think they're probably not going to do as well as they have in previous seasons, they lost Riyad Mahrez, and he's a real creative spark. He contributed double figures in terms of goals and assists last season, and without him, they lack creativity. James Maddison could potentially fill that gap, but I don't think he'll do as well as Mahrez, and I think without the service, the likes of Vardy and their other forwards aren't going to do as well. They're not going to get as many goals, and they won't do as well as they have in previous season, but still, I think they could get maybe 11th, anywhere up to about 8th, somewhere in that top half of the table, mid-table, somewhere around there. I think they're probably going to finish in that region. Now moving up into the top half of the table, in 10th I've gone with Wolves. I think they could maybe drop down to 13th or 14th. They could maybe, just maybe, get a tiny bit higher to 9th or 8th, because they have made some unbelievable signings this transfer window. They played such good football last season, winning the championship. They've got a real team mentality, and something to note is almost the entirety of their squad speak Portuguese, so they've got kind of good chemistry going on there. I think their manager is also Portuguese, but looking at some of the players they've got that they brought in so far, very good players. They've got João Moutinho from Monaco. He's played over 100 games for Portugal. He's won the Euros. He's played in the Champions League. He is a very experienced player. They also got Johnny from Atletico Madrid, Paulo Alves from Liverpool, Vinagre from Monaco, Rui Patricio on a free from Sporting, Raul Jimenez from Benfica, Willy Bolly from Porto. They ended up getting a Phobe from Bournemouth, and then I believe they loaned him out to Stoke, and they got Bonatini on a permanent deal from Al Hilal. So they've made some pretty good signings, very good ones that are going to strengthen their side and bring real quality and experience to it, and combined with the players they already have, the likes of Neves and Jota, for example, I think they're all going to mesh together, and I think they're going to do really well next season. I really do. They play nice, attractive football. They've got some good players, and I think mid-table is a very achievable target for them next season. In 9th place, I've gone with Crystal Palace, and I think this depends entirely on whether or not they can keep hold of Wilfried Zaha. The likes of Chelsea, Man United and Spurs are all interested in his services, and he was instrumental for them last season. If it wasn't for him, they probably would have got relegated. They had one of the worst starts to a Premier League campaign of all time. They hadn't won a game for months. They brought in Roy Hodgson, he made them a lot more solid defensively, and they ended up coming 11th. And I think with a more reliable and consistent start next season, and with some of the decent signings they've made, they can definitely get into the top half of the table. They got Guaita from Getafe, decent signing from La Liga. He's a decent keeper there. He could probably start for them. They also got Sheku Kouyaté from West Ham. He's got good Premier League experience. He's proven in the league, and he should solidify them defensively. And they also brought in Max Meyer on a free from Schalke, which I think is a great signing. He didn't have the best of seasons last year, but in the past he has played very, very well. He's still very young. He's only 22, but he's still got a lot of experience. He's played around 200 games already in the Bundesliga at that young age, and he's going to bring experience and potential to their side. And with that creative spark in behind Zaha, I think they can do very, very well next season. Next up in 8th, I've gone with Everton, and I think in Marco Silva they've brought in a manager who can play attractive attacking football, and it's going to be good to watch. Last season under Sam Allardyce, a lot of Everton fans didn't like the way they played. It was quite boring and defensive. They didn't score many goals, but they've brought in some decent players. Richarlison for around £35 million. They also managed to get Luca Digne from Barcelona, which is a decent signing. They lost a fair few players, including Wayne Rooney being the standout one, as he scored quite a few goals for them last season, but I think overall they've solidified and they've got some good signings, and I think with Marco Silva they will play some good football and should easily be able to get into the top half of the table. They may drop down to maybe 10th or 11th. They could potentially get into the Europa League. I mean, they've got a lot of money. They could make some good signings maybe in the winter as well, but they've got a solid team, and with a good manager I think they can do well next season. Now moving on up into the European places, 7th to the 5th, it's the Europa League, and in 7th place I've gone with probably my most controversial pick in this video. It's West Ham, but I think they've got what it takes to get into the Europa League next season. Across the board they've made some great signings and really improved as a whole. They've got Manuel Pellegrini, a real experienced manager. He's one of only 4 or 5 managers to have won the Premier League on his first attempt at Man City, and he's also managed to take Villarreal to the Champions League semi-finals, and they're comparatively quite a small club with very limited resources, and he did very well with them. So I think with West Ham, especially the money they've got and the signings they've made, I think they can do really well. Just to go through some of them: Ryan Fredericks from Fulham, they got Issa Diop from Toulouse, Fabianski from Swansea I think is a real improvement there over Hart, and also Adrian. Jack Wilshere from Arsenal I think will provide a real creative spark in the midfield. Andrei Yarmolenko from Dortmund, quality signing there. Going forwards he can provide a lot of attacking potential there. They've also got Balbuena from Corinthians, don't know much about him. They got Felipe Anderson from Lazio for around £40 million. It's a lot of money, but he is a good player and he can provide a lot of pace going forwards. They will be a deadly team on the counter-attack. They've already got a lot of pacey players and he is going to add to that. And they also got Silva from Vitoria. Not too sure about him, but they've made some quality signings across the board. I think they're going to be quite a hard team to beat, just like Burnley were last season, and going forwards they've got a lot of attacking ability, and I think they can do really well next season. Now in 6th place I've gone with Tottenham. I know they finished 3rd last season and they've been improving year on year recently, but they've made 0 signings so far as of right now when I'm recording this video. That may change over the next week or so, but right now they haven't signed anyone, and they've got a very, very good squad with some world-class players, but the issue is they don't have much squad depth, and a lot of their bigger players were playing in the World Cup and won't be fully fit and may not feature in the first 3 games of the season. Harry Kane is world-class and can get them a lot of goals, but they rely on him a lot. If he gets injured, their backup option is Fernando Llorente. They've got great players like Eriksen, but then in backup they've got people like Sissoko. They don't have many players in reserve to come in, and I think if any of their key players, especially someone like Ali, Eriksen, or maybe Kane, get injured, I think they could do quite badly next season. And because they haven't signed anyone and improved compared to all the teams around them who have improved, I don't think they're going to do as well as they have previously. That could change. Kane could have an unbelievable season and score like 35 goals or something, and they could maybe get 3rd or 2nd, but with the current side they've got compared to the teams around them, I don't think they're going to get into the top 4, and I think 6th or 5th is probably going to be where they finish. In 5th place I've gone with Chelsea. They've got a new manager in Sarri, and I think it will take a while for the players to adapt to his style of play and for him to adapt to the Premier League, so for that reason I think they'll probably have quite a slow start. Also combine that with the fact that many of their big players like Hazard were playing in the latter stages of the World Cup and probably won't be at peak fitness for the first couple of games of the season. They've signed 2 players, Jorginho, who I think will strengthen their first team, and Rob Green, who won't really feature and will probably just play in cup competitions. So they've had a decent transfer window, but I think because of the new manager, it will take them a while to adapt, and compared to the teams around them who've strengthened more, I don't think they're going to do as well, and will probably get somewhere around 5th or 6th, and they could maybe get up to 4th, maybe 3rd, I'm not sure. They've got a manager who hasn't won anything yet, but was very, very good at Napoli, so it's going to be hard and interesting to see how he adapts to the Premier League. You never know. I think quite a hard team to predict, but I've given them 5th place. Now, completing the predictions, we've of course got the top 4. This is probably the most highly anticipated section of any Premier League predictions, and it is obviously quite hard to predict as well. But in 4th place, I've gone with Arsenal. They've had a very, very good transfer window, up there with Liverpool, Fulham and Wolves in my opinion, and they've made a very good appointment with Unai Emery. I think he's going to breathe a breath of fresh air into the club, and it's going to be interesting to see how they play under a new manager, having had Arsene Wenger for so many years. They have signed some very good players, and they've got a lot of squad depth now. Liechtensteiner, they got him on a free, so they've now got him and Bellerin at right back, already got Monreal and Kolasinac at left back, and they've also got, along with Mustafi and Koscielny, Socrates. They managed to sign him as well, I believe for around £20 million, which is a very good signing. And they've also got Cech alongside Leno, so many options at the back. In the midfield, they signed Torreira, and he's a solid player, had a good World Cup, very comfortable on the ball, good at breaking up the play. He will slot right into that midfield. They also got Guendouzi from Lorient, and he had a pretty good pre-season, so I think overall they have strengthened a lot. And Aubameyang and Lacazette had a very good pre-season together. They ended last season playing very well as well. They link up very nicely with Aubameyang on the wing and Lacazette up front, and I think heading into next season, if they manage to keep up that form, they could have a very, very good year and easily get into the top 4, maybe even push for 3rd or 2nd. And in the coming years, if they strengthen more and if Unai Emery adapts to the Premier League, I think Arsenal could be back to their best. But I think next season, they're going to be good. They're going to get into the top 4. Next up in 3rd place, I've gone with Manchester United. I think they could maybe have a really good season and finish 2nd or 1st, but likewise they could have a really bad season and finish 6th, 7th, maybe even lower, just because of the way Mourinho is speaking. He seems so negative in his press conferences, the way he's speaking about players. It really reminds me of how he was the season at Chelsea, where he got sacked at Christmas and left them, I think, like 14th or 15th. It was the worst season by far of his career. And the way he's speaking right now really does remind me of that. He just seems so negative, especially about young players. He's really marginalising players like Martial. And although they've signed a couple of decent players, Dalot, not really too sure if he's going to start for them. Legrand isn't, but they got Fred, and I think he could free up Pogba more. And Pogba seems to be quite restricted by the way that Mourinho plays at United. I think for France, he's unbelievable, such a good player. And we saw that in the World Cup, but he can't play as well as he can at United. Mourinho just doesn't get the best out of him. I think with a different manager who got the best out of people like Pogba and Lukaku, United could be really, really good. But with how Mourinho is talking right now, it seems so negative, and as I said, it does remind me of the season he just had a massive meltdown at Chelsea. He always seems to do badly in his 3rd season, and I think it could be like that this season. Maybe they could finish lower than 3rd. I've put them in 3rd just because you don't know with United. You never know. They're always up there. They're always up there. They've got so many brilliant players, and they should do well. But just with Mourinho and the way he's speaking, just the negativity. I mean, a lot of my friends are United fans, and they feel the same way. They just feel he's been really negative recently, and I don't see them doing well this season. I've put them in 3rd, but it could be lower. But you never know. It's United. They could win the league. I just don't know. Let me know what you think down below. So we've got 2 teams left, Liverpool and Man City. Both teams have had great transfer windows so far, and they played very good football last season, with Man City winning the title with 100 points and breaking so many records along the way. I think these two sides are the favourites for the title, but in 2nd, I've gone with Liverpool just because they finished 25 points behind Man City last season. Despite having the best transfer window, in my opinion, of all the clubs so far in the league, I don't think that they've done enough to be able to bridge that gap, because City have the quality and the consistency. That's something Liverpool didn't have last season and haven't really had recently. They can beat all the big teams. They can beat City, United, Chelsea, all those types of teams, but they always seem to struggle against weaker sides. The likes of West Brom, Stoke, teams that got relegated last season were teams they dropped a lot of points against, and I think unless they really manage to fix that, which I think is more down to the management rather than the players, I don't see them being able to win the title. They've got a very, very solid team now. They brought in Alisson, who's a big upgrade over Karius. They've got Fabinho and also Keita in the midfield. Big upgrades there over probably Milner and Henderson, I imagine, will be the 2 players who get swapped out. And it adds more defensive security to their team now, having a proper defensive midfielder, which they haven't really had since Gerrard left. They've added Shaqiri to their front line, which is already very, very good with Salah, Firmino and Mane. But as I said, I don't think they have the consistency that City had, and I think they will really push City to the title. It won't be like last season where City dominated everyone and won by such a wide margin. I think it will be closer, maybe 5 or 6 points, but I still see City having the edge just because they're more consistent. Last season, they won the most games of any Premier League side of all time. They beat a lot of those smaller teams. They may have lost to Liverpool, they may have lost to United, but I think they won like 32 out of 38 games. They lost very, very few games. They dropped very few points against the smaller teams, and that is the key to winning a title. You have to be consistent, and that's something Liverpool haven't really had last season or in previous seasons, and I mean, that's why I think City are going to come out on top. So obviously, moving on to City, they've signed Riyad Mahrez. That is the main signing they've made so far, the marquee signing. They broke their record to sign him for around £60 million. They also signed 2 young players, Gomez from PSG and another young player from PSV Eindhoven, but neither of them will really feature next season. The main one is Riyad Mahrez, and he just adds to that squad depth they already have. Benjamin Mendy is also going to be a bit of an improvement and almost like a new signing, as last season he didn't really feature, and the key weak point, the only really weak point in the side, was not having a proper left back. They had Delphin Zinchenko and they were decent, they filled that role, but Mendy's going to really add to it, and they're going to be better with him. They already had the best defence in the league last season, conceding the fewest goals. Having Mendy is going to make them even better defensively, and they just have so much squad depth. If you look at the team, they've got very, very good options all over the pitch. 2 decent keepers, Ederson especially. Across the back line, Kompany, Laporte, Stones and Otamendi. In the midfield, you've got the likes of Gundogan as backup. You've got obviously De Bruyne, Silva and Fernandinho in the midfield, and then up front, Aguero, Jesus, Sterling, Sane, Bernardo Silva, Mahrez, so many options, and they've got Guardiola, probably the best manager in the world right now, definitely up there. The way he's playing, just his style of play, I can't see teams beating City, or many teams beating City. I think City will win the league again. I think it will be a less convincing win compared to last season. I don't think they'll get as many points. I think more teams will beat them as teams have wisened up to the way City play. But I just don't think many teams will be able to stop them. I still think City would just steamroller a lot of teams, and they're just more consistent than the teams around them. Liverpool can beat the big sides, but they always seem to stumble against weaker teams, and unless they fix that, I think City will still win the title. But I know it's quite controversial. A lot of people seem to think Liverpool will win the league this season. I just don't see it though, with the strength City have. They finished 25 points ahead of them last season, and despite having strengthened a lot, I still think Liverpool lack the consistency, as I've said, to beat those weaker teams. So I'm not sure. Let me know what you think down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know any type of prediction video like this, it always seems to annoy people, but instead of just leaving a dislike, let me know down below why you disagree, and I'll be reading through the comments, replying to you guys, liking comments, all that good stuff. Let me know what your predictions are for the league. Leave a like. It took so much effort to make this video, so if you could do that, that would be much appreciated. Subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll catch you guys later. Take care.